Hello Fearless Gamers, Matt here for Fearless Games, and today I'm going to be doing an entry in the Fearless Games' new segment of the book corner called Codex Edition. This is where we take codexes, primarily ones from 6th edition, since that's going to be the newest and greatest thing, from Warhammer 40,000, and do critiques on them in a series of different categories, scoring them each individual points within these categories, and then totaling up their score to see what that they can achieve and how they stack up in the Fearless's opinion. Now, this may just go over into other games later on, but for right now, we're going to probably stick with just doing codexes from Warhammer 40,000. But that is for another time to see if maybe we will do some other books like, say, the Warhammer Fantasies, or possibly something like from War Machine or Dystopian Wars or general games like that. But that is all in good time, and we will see what the future holds if we go that far with this. And so, for this one, my first entry in the Book Corner Codex Edition is going to be on the 6th edition Dark Angels Codex. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is the cover of the Codex itself, because the cover is what essentially draws you into the book. This is probably one of the most key features of any Codex, or any game book for that matter, when trying to sell it to new players or get players who've already existed interested in the product. Now, for the most part, I have to say this is probably a really nice cover. Probably one of the better ones I've seen in a long while come out of Games Workshop. What I like about it is out of all the codexes for Dark Angel Space Marines that I've seen, it's the only one that features just one figure on the cover. A lot of the other ones tend to throw a whole mass of figures in front of you, and that can be a little bit overwhelming, primarily because there's so many figures on the cover, you don't know which one to look at, who's what's going on, or anything like that. And this one does a step back and does a major improvement, focusing on only one giant character instead of a mass group of them. And it's a really beautifully drawn character. I have to say, the artwork on this is gorgeous. And it's a really eye-catching cover. We just see this Space Marine armed with a bolt pistol and pointing it at some type of target that's out of view here. And he's kind of got like this dark / noble look about him. He doesn't look overly menacing, giving you the idea that this is possibly someone who is, on a righteous crusade, or performing a delivering a form of justice. But at the same time, with all the skulls and the dark shadows and the light reflecting off of them, you're not quite sure. It kind of gives him this look that he possibly may be a villain of some sort, leaving you to sit there and wonder, well, is this a good guy? Is this a bad guy? Is he neutral? What is the story with this character? What is the story with this army that he represents? The background is also done very well. It's very subtle, so it doesn't draw the attention away from the main focus of the picture, but it's also not very low tone to make it fall into the category you're dull or bland. It's essentially the nice balance between interesting and subtle, giving you this background that doesn't over-exaggerate what's going on, like most codexes beforehand tend to do, with these giant grand battles in the background, and kind of forcing you, and kind of causing you to look behind the main focus of the cover. All in all, this cover, I think, does a very good job at getting one interested in the army itself. It pulls you right in, and you immediately can come up with some sort of idea of what this book is about and what this army is about, and it really gets you going into wondering, just what's behind this cover. So, I rate the cover with a 5 out of 5. So far, the Codex is doing pretty well. Let's see if it can hold this up. Now, the next is going to be presentation. presentation is a very key importance with the book itself, because it sets up how the book flows, how easy it is to navigate, and just in general, how easy it is for you to figure out where you are and what you're going off of. And all in all, the presentation is actually pretty spot on. There's one or two points where you can get a little bit confused as to what page is what, and in terms of if you're in war gear for Space Marines, for vehicles, if this is special war gear and stuff like that. But all in all, it does not get really overall confusing. It doesn't seem, the way that they present it is very simple, I should say. There's only a little bit of small border edging around the sides, so it gives a little bit of flair to the pages without causing all of this crazy detail going all over the page, making it hard to, in essence, discern what is information and what is artwork. It also has a very nice setup and organization, making it very easy, making it flow very easily. In a sense, it tells you the story Fluff, then it tells you a little bit about the units, then the war gear, then it goes into the actual army listing, stats, and setups and such. I find that this is probably, out of so far, between the two codexes that I have read, probably the easier one to figure out exactly where's what and what goes where and how everything is set up. And because of that, I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. Because the presentation is very well done, there is just a couple of slip-ups where you can get a little lost as to what point you're going, wait a minute, was this here, was that there, type of thing. It's very minor, which is why I'm giving it a 9, but it's not super perfect to the point where the whole book just flows to a point where you can just go, okay, I'm here, and just, essentially the presentation is done in such a way where you can't get lost as long as you're reading through the pages at a steady pace, but you may get a little bit lost and confused as to where things are going when you're trying to look for something specific in a timely fashion. Wondering why it's not appearing on this page when you thought it was, and then finding out it's one page forward or one page back. So now let's go on to the Fluff. The Fluff is probably one of the most important parts of the book because it tells you the story of the Dark Angels, it gives you all the information about each units, and kind of paints the picture of the units themselves and the army as a whole. And for once, I'm kind of actually liking the Fluff in this. Mainly the presentation of it is very well done. It's done in a more narrative fashion rather than a textbook style like some of the previous codexes used to be. And it gives out a lot more information than we used to have prior to, and we get a bit of a better understanding of the structure of the Dark Angels chapter setup, and how the levels and stats work in the system in terms of, the Tactical Marines versus the Deathwing versus the Inner Circle versus the Raven Wing, and stuff like that. It also throws in some interesting pieces of information that were kinda lost for a while, and thankfully has been reassured that yes, it's still canon. There are some parts, though, that are very glazed over, and leave you sitting there going, wait a minute, this doesn't disprove, but it doesn't reaffirm that what we knew before still is canon. A good example is Sergeant Naaman. You're not sure, or Naaman is you're not sure if he still existed and what's the deal with him. They also kind of made it a little bit confusing as to some of the information here. They do mention that one chaplain had the record of most repentance out of all in the whole history of the Dark Angels, but then it says Asmodai is the most successful chaplain. Granted, the most successful chaplain could mean a lot of things, but on the surface, the first thing that some people may think is well, if he's the best, why isn't he the one with the most conversions if he's the most successful of all the chaplains? So it can be a little bit confusing on that front, and the one thing that I'm not a big fan of is how super secretive it seems that they've made the Dark Angels in this. Granted, the Dark Angels have always been about keeping their secrets, but it's gotten to a whole new level. at first it was, at first the original setup was the Ravenwing knew that the Fallen they knew that they were traitors they're traitors that were involved in some way, shape, or form during the Horus Heresy. When they get to Deathwing, they learn that the Fallen are Dark Angel Space Marines, and then the Inner Circle finds out about Luthor and that whole deal, and then so forth and such on and so forth. But this time they started to make it go even weirder than that. Oh, Ravenwing doesn't know what the Fallen are, but the Black Knights do. But the Black Knights only know that they're Dark Angels, and Deathwing know that they're Dark Angels, and that they were working with Luthor, but nobody knows that Luthor... But you have to get into the Dark Knights to learn this part, and it's like, whoa, wait... How can you... it seems a little bit too unrealistic how controlled the secrets are within the Dark Angels. I can understand going, okay, the Ravenwing is aware that the Fallen are traitor Space Marines, but it seems a little bit further beyond to think that, wait, once they become Ravenwing, once they become Black Knights, they know that they're Fallen Dark Angels along with Samael. And then once they're Deathwing, they learn about Luthor, and then once they're Deathwing Knights, I don't know if they learn any more about that, and then the Inner Circle, they learn the whole story. It's very too complicated. They made the level of who knows what so complicated, I think it makes it harder to write fluff appropriately for, say, novels, or doing it in role-playing games such as Deathwatch. It makes it a little bit harder to really establish what the Dark Angels know at what rank. And I think it just made it a little bit too complicated than it had to be. So I'm going to be giving the fluff a 8 out of 10. It's really good. A lot of it is very original, while not doing a total reconstruction of all the fluff that we know and that we've known previously. Giving us new information, but again, some of it starts to get a little bit too ridiculous, and some of it tends to get a little bit complicated as to figuring out what they're actually saying in some points. And now let's move on to the units in the book. The units are probably the biggest thing to look at the Dark Angels Codex, aside from the fluff, because they're what gets you the reason for buying the army, and they have to be just unique enough so when someone fields the Dark Angels, they are feeling like, they are playing something unique, and it's not something that you can simulate in another codex. And they do an overall very good job with this, especially with distinguishing the Deathwing and the Ravenwing, giving you the Black Knights, the Deathwing Knights, throwing in some of the command squads, the extra gear, and stuff that you can do with them. It is actually quite interesting, but they kind of falter in the fact that not every unit that they have here really has a decent purpose to make you want to field them over another unit. By this I mean, for a game that's trying to be more narrative, they seem to have kind of glazed over the Space Marines themselves in the book. And by this I mean now they're throwing in a very big plasma-heavy feel with the Codex itself. Granted, this is really hard to say without seeing the Space Marine Codex once they come out and we see what their tactical troops can be. That could change the game entirely for this. But as a whole, sitting right here, they seem to be no different than generic Marines. They could have been throwing something else in there to kind of help make the Space Marine troops a little bit more interesting in one way. Like, could have given them like an upgrade or tactical unit ability, which, you pay some points and they get them to re-roll their Gets Hot rule with their plasma weapons. Or maybe rig it where they can have 2 plasma guns in a squad of Space Marines. Instead of just being, if your unit has 5, you may pick this, or maybe just say, for every 5 Space Marines, you can have 1 plasma gun. in that way. And same with the Scouts. The Scouts didn't really get much. They don't get the special transport that they introduced in the Space Marine Codex. And again, they have nothing really going for them. They could have thrown in Sergeant Naaman again and make the Scouts a little bit more interesting and useful in a sense that you'd want to put them, but they didn't even go that far with it. And in a way, what it is they make it more encouraging to want you to play Deathwing or Ravenwing. Thus, they want you to buy either Samiel, Belial, or Azrael, and they kind of just go, well, if you don't want to play those guys and you just want to play regular Marines, have fun with that. Yeah. And so they essentially just did it where, oh, you know, you want to play regular Space Marines, but you want Dark Angel gear. Well, then they just slapped in the Space Marine unit. I felt that there could have been a little bit more potential with that, and again, there are certain vehicles in here and certain units I felt that were just done in such a way where you could live without them, and you probably would never say, oh, I really want to use these. They don't give an incentive to make all the units unique in a way that would make them useful in their own individual way to give you a reason to place them in your army. And so I could possibly see that this codex could have the same effect as the previous editions, which was you're going to see Deathwing or mostly going to see Ravenwing armies out on the field. Not a bad thing, but for a company that wants to try and sell a lot of different miniatures, you figured they would have given you a little bit more incentive to play an Interrogator Chaplain, a Librarian, a Company Master over Belial, Samiel, or Azrael. But because of that, I am going to give this score a 8 out of 10. Primarily because the units in it are great, the war gear is awesome, and what they throw in and what they put the effort into is really great. But it suffers from the same issue that most codexes have, which is there are some units in here that will probably never hit the field in any regular game. And so, overall, this codex has scored a 30 out of 35. Not bad. This codex is actually really good, and what it does great, it does great. There are a couple of hiccups that do prevent it from getting a perfect score. And that is all for today, Fearless Gamers. If there's any comments that you have, your own personal opinion about the Dark Angels Codex, feel free to leave a comment in there. If you think there should be some other topic category that we should incorporate into rating the codexes, please feel free to make the suggestion and we will take it into account. And that is all for right now, so thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet, subscribe and keep in touch with us on our Facebook for the latest up-to-date news on what's happening with the channel. And until next time, Fearless Gamers, take care.